the questions, I'm all set, man.
I pressed the button and we are live.
Oh, you're already live.
Yeah.
That's bizarre.
That's the classic way to do it, though. We just start mid-conversation.
Absolutely.
Do you know what happened right before this, Rob? I went through all this effort to make myself a coffee, right?
Right. You did take a little while. I didn't say anything because you were
Yeah.
like, right, ready to go in 5. And I was like, oh, shit. Well, Lloyd's usually on it. I better hurry up. Yeah. And then you were late. Go on.
So I'm on this keto diet and have been for like 2.5 months or whatever. It seems to be very effective. So it's fine. But it's like, full fat, sort of, you eat lots of fat food. You don't eat any carbs or sugar. So I was making myself a keto coffee, which is like coffee with like oil and butter and like all this weird shit, right? And I had like all that stuff together. And you can't really have milk, but you can have cream. So I went into the fridge and I was like, Grant, there's some cream here. And it was said the date was the 30th, which is 6 days from now. And I was like, Grant. So then I just I had made all the stuff in, like, I had to make it in a pot so that I could like blitz it, like mix it all up and shit.
Yeah.
So it was all done apart from the last bit, which is going to be the cream. And it went blunk, like a chunk of it, and my rage was just beyond compare. I had put so much fucking work into that coffee.
I hate that as well because sometimes when you're, and the same happens with milk, you're looking at the milk carton and deceptively there's no discoloration. It looks fine. And then you do it and it just comes out in a lump. Oh, man. It surprises me that cream's okay and milk isn't, though. I thought cream was...
Yeah, it's full fat or whatever cream. So it's, you want more fat, more oil, more goo whenever possible in this diet.
That sounds good, man.
Yeah, I mean, I made one again, so I have it in this enormous cup that I got for Christmas, which is quite a large cup.
You could be showing me it, man, but this is another thing that we need to talk about to the viewer. Lloyd is completely frozen for me, so I can't see if he's moving or showing me this mug.
Yeah, it's hello to the people in the chat. Can you see me moving, or am I a frozen statue? We'll find out this and many more questions today on the Ties Cast.
You did a segue. That's amazing, man.
Yes. Yep.
I've taught you well, clearly.
I'm clicking fingers. I'm on presenter mode today.
That's amazing.
So we actually haven't played any games since we last did one of these. I don't think we haven't played
at all. I
don't think so. No. We would have had Jade Horde in the off week, but we didn't. And now I think since the last time we did it, we talked about all our games.
Yeah, I think you're right, because I had meant to ask you before we went live, but then you did the thing where you just make us go live. So yeah, you're right. We don't have any games to talk about. We haven't been in any games, Lloyd.
Yeah, it's odd. It's a strange situation. I have been in one game yesterday, which I will talk about, but we're also going to talk about today some things. So I want to talk about cities because I'm working on a new setting-ish, and it's Cyberpunk, and you have been running a city game in a modern-day city, so we're going to smash about that. And then I also wanted to talk about Mind Flayers and Aberrations, and that they're horrifying and should be horrifying. We should do basically a Why Aren't You More Afraid edition of Aberrations.
Yes, why aren't you more afraid of Aberrations? Excellent. That's definitely good. And then obviously, like usual, we'll take some questions as well. Oh no, we're also going to be talking about something else, aren't we, Lloyd?
WHIPS.
WHIPS.
There was a Caius from Caius Corner fame posted an image from, he was in a discussion in one of the many Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition groups. I think the big one, which I am not a member of for reasons that I think are clear to most people who are a part of that group. But there's a discussion there about what the whip is for, and we'll get into that. But so I played yesterday in Nico's Game of Thrones game.
Right.
And it was like the 15th or 16th session. The campaign is called A Dragon's Horde. And it's about hunting down this mythical treasure from the Targaryens that was like pulled out of the Red Keep during the siege or whatever. So it's been hidden. And we spent 16 sessions trying to get it. And then yesterday we got it. We found it. We found the actual treasure. And I don't think I've ever been so satisfied in my life. Like a full campaign, which was trying to find treasure. And then we got the treasure. And it was so good. All this money, all these Valyrian steel items, all that sort of cool stuff. But also, it had been revealed some time ago that Chex's character, Barden, was actually the son of Rhaegar Targaryen and Elia Martell, which makes him the king of Westeros and also of Dorne and basically the most noble person in the whole world. And we had kind of, I had kind of kept that from him. He is my bastard son in the game. But it was revealed and we went, and then as we were like looking at this treasure, a dragon came out of the chamber and like, oh God, it was like all up in my character's grill, and I was trying to like get it to back away from my son. And then it grabbed him, bit him, and flew down into the volcano with him. And there was devastating like tears and agony. And then like 20 minutes later, up out of the fire he comes, riding the dragon because he's a Targaryen and so cannot be burned. And it was just the best. It was amazing.
Oh my God. Yes, of course. That's incredible.
Yep. It was really great. It was like a campaign that finally got like tied together, and like we're not finished it yet, but it was like that was the big thing that we had been doing, and now we're gonna, I think, get to spend a few sessions spending all of that wealth and like doing the things we want to do, you know.
Oh, that sounds incredible. Oh man. I was tense just listening to you explain about it, man. But that's really satisfying in going into a volcano and coming out of it. Obviously he didn't get burned. I love that.
It was very fun.
Because isn't in the books there's supposed to be like an actual spoilers to the Game of Thrones books. I haven't read them, but I'm sure Lloyd knows more about it than me. There is supposed to be another heir to the throne that isn't Jon Snow. That's right?
There is, yeah. In the books, there's an Aegon, who is Daenerys' nephew, Rhaegar's son, basically. No, maybe it's not Rhaegar's son. It might be Aerys' other son. I'm not sure. But there is like a younger heir who's like down in Dorne, and that's just not in the show. So obviously, it's not important in the books, which is kind of disappointing. Because the thing is, there's so much more in the books, and so that when the show doesn't show you a character, you immediately discount them as being important, because if they were important to the overall story, they would be in the show. Like there's a Victorian Greyjoy who is my favorite character who is not in the show. I'm devastated about that. Yeah.
Oh man, it's exciting. It's exciting. You're coming in a bit broken, Lloyd. I'm just going to say that now before we continue. According to folk in the chat, cycling between you and your logo, which might be the times that I'm not seeing your logo because I'm seeing your, I don't know.
I never have internet problems. I'm going to go down to just audio.
Okay. I mean, to be honest, man, you don't sound particularly bad. Like, it's just every now and then you get like little clips. Or maybe it's just me. I don't know. But in the meantime, let us move on, as we don't have any other games to. Well, unless there's anything else about that game that you want to talk about. Like, do you have any plans that what you're going to spend that money on?
Oh, so many. It was about 10,000 gold dragons, which is
that's a kingdom.
Yes, in Westeros, an insane amount of money. We also found 4 ancient Valyrian steel weapons. One of which is called the Dragon Lord's Blade, one of which is called Iron Breaker, which is like from the Iron Age. So it's like so ancient. It's this axe. And one of them is a mace called the Heart of Valyria, which is like made from the heart of a volcano. Just all this crazy shit. Amazing stuff. We also found like a bunch of deeds to land in the Stormlands and the Crownlands. Ancient deeds from like the kings or whatever that we can go back and be like, this is our land now. Yep. And we found like these ancient histories that Old Town and the Macers are going to pay so much money for. So we're going to like take that stuff. We're going to basically improve the castle that we own massively. We're going to hire the Golden Company of mercenaries.
Yes.
Yep, we're going to get them, and we're going to basically ensure that our castle is well and safe, and then we're going to put Barden on the throne before Daenerys comes over, hopefully.
Well, she takes a sweet time, so you know. That's really, really cool. Oh my goodness! But then you have dragons to deal with from that side, don't you?
And she has more than we do. We just have the one.
So, so you actually have that dragon then?
Yep. So he's the dragon is called Doron, which is the word for stone in Valyrian, and yep, he that dragon now obeys Barden, does what it's told, which is mental, amazing.
That's amazing. And is it full sized?
No, it's about the size of a horse, a bit bigger than a horse.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
That's really cool. How very exciting. There's a lot of really amazing things about Westeros. You know, it's families, it's different cultures, it's creatures. But one really remarkable thing about A Song of Ice and Fire is its cities. Wouldn't you say, Lloyd?
I would. Yeah.
King's Landing.
Yep.
Winterfell.
Old Town.
Old Town. Bravos.
Highgarden.
Ah, Highgarden. Yeah.
Starfall.
Yep, that's one of my faves. Yeah, I love that name.
Sunspear.
Sunspear.
I will do this. We'll just name cities for the rest of the.
We're just going to name a city for that.
Yes, I have never run a game in a city. No, I have, but never run a game that's about a city, if you know what I mean. Like where the city is kind of a character, which I think it is when you play a urban game. And I'm kind of, I've never really done it before, and I thought it'd be good to discuss.
Yeah, man, it's definitely good. So before we actually dive in, let's talk about this setting you've been cooking up, because you posted a thing on Facebook the other day and it looked rad. So what are you working towards, first of all, so we know how this discussion can be of help, you know?
Yes, it's Dublin, 100 years from 2 years ago, so 2116. It's because 1916 is a very important date in like Irish history, and I was like, we'll just do 200 years after that. I wanted to be cyberpunk. I wanted to be Shadowrun-esque, actually, because I wanted to be fantasy elements as well. And normal cyberpunk doesn't have that. That's like a Shadowrun specific thing, I guess, where there's elves and orcs and all that sort of stuff thrown in. So I wanted it to be like this thing where, you know, Dublin's a very old city, ancient. And often with cyberpunk, it tends to be in cities that are either new world or like new, you know. They tend to be like either American cities, or they're like a city that's been invented since. It's called like Metropolis or whatever, you know. You know what I mean? It's like the generic sort of the city sort of thing. But I wanted to be...
Yeah.
I think, to me, it seems to make sense that if you're going to run a city game, it should be a city that you know very well, so that you don't have to make up stuff. Because to me, the idea of making up a city sounds so arduous and so stressful. You know, you see people do it in fantasy games. They're like, I'm going to design a city. I'm like, why would you do that? That sounds like so much work.
It is a lot of work. I think the only thing that a fantasy city has going for it is that, I mean, you can kind of make it up as long as you know that there's roughly what there's going to be, because you roughly know what they're going to go for. Like, I want to go to a blacksmith. Well, obviously there's going to be a blacksmith. You can tell them about the blacksmith. I want to go to a tavern. There are lots of taverns. Pick one of these names, you know?
Yeah.
But I think you're quite right in it being advantageous to base it games in real cities that you know. Like with me, I know London very well. That's why I chose it for Vampire.
Yeah.
And by that logic, you're running this game in Dublin as well. I think it's great. You can Google things whilst you're in game if you're playing online, which we often do. You can send people the addresses. I mean, I'm not sure how the addresses will change 200 years from now in Dublin, but you know what I mean? Like if we were playing like a modern game in a modern city, I send you the postcodes to the addresses you can go to, so you can Google them. So it adds a very I don't know. I find that element of the game fun anyway.
Yeah, I think so. And I think if it's a modern city, then you've got all this stuff that, like you can give the players a Google map basically instead of having to like design a map. Like here you go. This is what it looks like. Here are the like. And what's so great about like a modern city and a real city is that it's like so detailed. Like there are street names and names for all of the lanes, and like all of that stuff has history. Like particularly in like medieval cities like Dublin and London and places like that, there's like whole sections of Dublin that are like, there's a Misery Hill area, which is like where they used to keep the lepers, you know?
Oh man.
And like it's called Misery Hill, and that's why it's called that, and like it's still called that, and it will be called that 500 years from now, which I think, you know, is amazing. And you know, even like in London with Down Street and like the broken down tube station or whatever, that like is a natural place for the Nosferatu to hang out, and like you can have that kind of thing. And also you can do stuff with names like Misery Hill, or like here we have a Viking Quay, and places like that, where you can just like take actual place names and then see, like give them a fantasy twist and turn them into something real sort of striking. You know what I mean?
I agree. There's oh no, screw it, I'll tell you. You won't. I know you won't mess game or anything, but there's an area in London that you've not been to, or rather a specific place you haven't been to. It's quite a famous location. Have you ever heard of Bedlam?
I've not actually.
Bedlam is a... Oh, do I tell you this? Do you want to hear it or not?
It a mental hospital?
It is.
Yeah, okay, yes, I have.
Now, in modern day in real life, that is now it's modernized and it's okay, but it had this history since the Elizabethan times and a little bit before that essentially people were treated abhorrently in this place. Like they treated mental illness like it was the people have been possessed by devils or things like that, you know, and then even throughout more recent history, electroshock therapy and things like that. Now we're playing the world of darkness, which obviously everything is darker than it is in the modern day. So my Bedlam never changed, which, and it's somewhere you've never been, but I know that it's there, and I know that that's interesting just because history has already done the work for me, you know?
Right. Yep. And that's obviously where the word Bedlam comes from. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, it's Bedlam out there. Like, yeah.
It's Bedlam, yeah.
Great. Yeah, and that's the kind of thing I mean. You know, there's lots of places that, and even like this, the structure of a city and how it's built makes a lot of sense because it happens organically. Particularly, like I say, old cities in Europe happen very organically. There's no grids, right? Like Dublin has no grid system. It's not, there's no blocks or anything. And that tends to be the case for like Paris and London and lots of older cities as well. And I think it would be so hard to make that up, like to just draw that. Because it's so hard to imagine how things would happen organically. Like there's, you know, all these old streets and stuff in Dublin that like have really weird names, Fishamble Street and all these places that used to be like fish markets, and they're at the top of a hill because they would let the like refuse roll down the hill into the river, and it was easier than like you know, like, and like that's like a real place or whatever. And like I would never think of that if I was designing a fantasy city, but it's like so rich to think of it, you know.
Yeah, and I mean, in fairness, you can make the big jumps. You can make the obvious calls, like obviously your city's location. Mainly, it's going to be near a body of water. If it's going to be like a mouth of a river, for instance, is very popular for fishing and for trade and things like that. So obvious jumps like that, like its location, can be handled more easily. I think you're quite right in the details of the city, where there are particular streets and in particular ways the city flows around itself, you know. Very interesting. What's the system you're using for this game, by the way, Lloyd? I didn't ask you.
It's probably going to be the Sprawl,
right?
Which is something I picked up recently. It's powered by the Apocalypse game for Cyberpunk. But I might use Blades in the Dark, because that game is bloody amazing. Okay. I picked it up recently and I absolutely adore it. I think it's real clever. I think it's really, really cool. And I have looked, and there is a Shadowrun hack for Blades in the Dark, so I might use something like that. I would use Shadowrun, but I simply cannot be fucked.
No, I'm with you there.
You know, like I actually spent like over 2 weeks trying Shadowrun and trying to learn it, and I just couldn't do it. Like I couldn't make myself sit down and learn all of the various systems within that system. Like there's just too much going on. It's such a shame, such a crying shame, because the setting is so great.
It is a great setting, absolutely.
But yeah, I just stepped away, and I'm going to use something more simple.
You were very briefly involved in the Blades in the Dark game before, but it got cancelled, didn't it, because of Marky's internet connection? Am I right?
Yes. Yep.
Now, I know the concept of Blades in the Dark, so let's talk numbers, let's talk mechanics, because I've never played Blades in the Dark. I don't know how it's run. All I know is the fluff. Tell me about how it's run.
So you make a crew, it's called. Basically a gang. Make a gang together. There's different kinds of gangs. There's like assassins and like bravos who are like thugs, and then there's like all these different kinds of gangs that you can be, who have different jobs, basically. So you make a gang together. You each pick a playbook or like a character. You make a character. Those range from like just straight up thugs to like assassins to thieves to like whispers, which are like these strange sort of magical people, to like alchemists, all sorts of weird shit. And the system is very easy. Like you attempt a thing and you roll a number of dice equal to like your rating in the thing. It's always a d6 that you're rolling. And then you roll a bunch of them, and whatever the highest number is, that's what your success is. So a 6 is a full-on success. I think 3 to 5 is success at a cost, and then 1 to 2 is like, oh boy, you're in trouble.
Okay, so it's got the success. It's kind of not obviously the same system, but kind of like the Star Wars thing where you can succeed, but it'll cost you in some way as well.
Yeah, so it's non-binary in terms of like the resolution. It's not either like, oh, you've done it or you failed. There's also a middle, and the middle is what mostly happens.
Yes. So
you do a job, like you basically, it's got mechanics for figuring out a heist, basically, and you do the legwork, which is like the bit before where you're gathering information, you're trying to figure out what the plan is going to be, and then you go and actually do the job, which I haven't done yet, but what it basically does is you can build up these points, and then you can kind of like do a flashback. So because rather than spend, this is the thing that Shadowrun does, rather than spend an hour and a half before you do the heist discussing what the plan is going to be, you get straight into the heist and you're doing it, and then you can be like, when you encounter a problem, you can spend like points to do a flashback and be like, oh, but we thought of this, and this is what we did to try and come around this or whatever.
That's great. That's awesome.
So it's kind of Ocean's 11-y almost, you know?
Oh, wow.
And yeah, so then there's that. You do the job, and then there's like also pretty detailed like downtime. Your characters need to like go and get drunk, or like they need to have a vice, basically, to not go mad from like stress and from all this other stuff. So they need to have a vice. Maybe that's like buying expensive clothes. Maybe it's getting drunk. Maybe it's smoking opium. Whatever it is, you know. And you got to like indulge that vice, or else you're going to get major problems to your character. It's real elegant. It's pretty simple, like mechanically as well. It really focuses on the narrative stuff.
That's really cool. I was actually wondering, because I was watching whilst you were playing, and I was thinking, when I was playing, I had my headphones in, watching you playing, or listening to you playing whilst playing Dishonored. I've been replaying Dishonored 1 and 2, and that's it. Kind of the setting and the sort of reminds me of Dishonored in a way, with you got flintlocks, but you have swords, but you can also use magic and stuff. And I thought this would be a really good system to maybe run a Dishonored game. So I wonder if there's like a hack, because I would
absolutely
totally love to do that.
At the opening of this book, it's like, here's the thing that inspired it: Peaky Blinders, The Wire, Narcos, and then video games: Thief, Dishonored, and Bloodborne, which are like Definitely. So Dishonored is in there, and like it feels like Dishonored in lots of ways as well. The setting does, it's like this industrial sort of hellscape. It's always dark, and like whaling is where all of the energy comes from, but the whales are like demons, like enormous monsters who live in the ocean, and yeah, it's pretty nifty. So yeah, I probably will use that system to run this thing somewhere down the line. Oh, Rob? Uh-oh. Oh boy. People in the chat, am I still here or is Rob still here? What's happened here? Not good. So I can't tell if it's me or if it's... Okay. Hey, D'Amico, can you hear me or is Rob gone? Okay, it's me. I'm still here. Okay, that's fine. So I can just keep talking then. Excellent. Thank you very much to all of you in the chat. So I did want to, while I get the chance, talk about some questions. So I've been doing this like Iscloft 30-day world thing every day for the past, I guess, 5 days. And I got some questions yesterday on my video from Rob Barkley and from Dampier Workshop. So I was going to answer those real quick on this stream. So the one from Dampier Workshop was kind of like in a setting where technology doesn't change much. Like, how can you, if your players want all the fancy tech, or if they want to like change things dramatically or whatever, what can you do to kind of keep them interested? I'm going to try and find the question. That would probably be the best thing to do. This is the right time for me to be looking this up. In the middle of the video. Okay, here we go. How do you justify keeping the tech level on the lower end of the spectrum, especially when sometimes players may want to play hundreds of years after major events? I always feel like I get players who want to bring cool tech advancements into my games, and sometimes it feels natural that something would change in our own world. So the thing about it is with fantasy, there's actually a great video out there on the internet by a guy called NerdWriter1. Amazing YouTube channel. He does a thing about Game of Thrones and dragons and technology. And the general argument, which I totally agree with, is that technology is majorly stifled by magic. So if your setting has magic in it, the technology growth is going to be really dramatically less quick than our world, where you need technology to do all this stuff. So the example that he gives is like, when you have dragons, you don't need to like get the next weapon. You don't need to build, and like war is a huge driving force in technology and always has been. So you can kind of like, and I hate generally the idea that like, oh, but it's magic, so it doesn't matter. But I feel like it actually works to some extent in a high fantasy setting, because magic is doing most of the innovation that you need, and it's coming up with most of the solutions that you need. So you don't necessarily have to go and invent things. Oh, Tamika says, because innovation comes from necessity usually. Yeah, exactly. And if you don't need it, because you can use magic to do it, then you don't necessarily need to invent new stuff. If your players really want to bring new tech to the setting, then definitely let them, but within reason. So I would say in Iscloft, for example, which is very firmly in the Viking age technology-wise, it would be, I do have an area in the south of the map where they're starting to become more like Normans, which is like northern France, sort of. So they're starting to use cavalry in war. They're starting to call their leaders lords instead of jarls. They're starting to kneel instead of, whatever it is, drink a horn of mead. So there is a sort of slow advance happening there. But if your players are playing in a setting and they want to like add new stuff, then you can encourage them if it seems reasonable that their characters would do it, and if they want to invent stuff, I don't think there's a problem there. If they want to play hundreds of years after when the setting is set, then you're basically not playing the setting anymore. If somebody wanted to play Iskloft 800 years after it's set now, I don't know what it looks like. You know, I don't really know if it'll look the same or if it would look different. But Westeros, as an example, has remained the same technologically for hundreds of years, if not thousands of years. So it's, you know, you could say the same thing for Faerun and for Middle Earth and all these places. So hopefully that helps in a little way. Grayson says, well, one way to explain the lack of progress or change is not having any outside influences. That's also a really good point. Iskloft is very isolated, and there's not many people coming in from other countries, other places, and so there's not much cultural exchange going on either. And then the other question I got was from Rob Barkley, which was, question is, like, are there lands outside of Iskloft for them to raid? Which is a question that I had to ask myself a few times already. Short answer is yeah, probably. Long answer is ooh, probably. There is definitely one known place, which is called the Tuatha, which is like off to the east, the misty east. That is represents Ireland basically in this fake Europe of Iskloft. And it's this mysterious place. It's inhabited by Celtic people as opposed to Germanic people. These Celtic people, I guess you would say, are like the ancient Irish, the ancient Picts, Scots, the Iceni, all these people who lived in the British Isles, who would paint themselves blue and who would ride in chariots and all that good stuff. So that is one place definitely that they know of. I do know that there are other lands to the south of Iskloft. I don't know what those lands are yet. And the answer that I would give if somebody wanted to like look for a place to raid is just make it up and decide what's there. My guess would, like, the easiest trade is, yes, there are lands there to the south. And if you want to say that Iskloft is like Denmark and Norway, then the lands to the south are going to be France and Germany, and you can kind of put those in like a Middle Ages sort of feel. You could also say down there to the south, it's like the Mediterranean, so it's like warm, and people there get lots of money and gold and things like that. So generally speaking, the people in Iskloft raid other people in Iskloft. So the people from the north who have the necessity of raiding, they're the ones who go and raid and reeve in the south, generally speaking. So yeah, that's it was really great to get questions from those people about Iskloft. It's like always super nice that people are enthused, and I will take any excuse at all to talk about this setting. Grayson says, imagine that, yes, there is other places, but at the moment, the people of Iskloft have had no reason to explore that far yet. Yes, that's exactly it. And Tamika says, make it up as you go. A DM stable for decades. Absolutely. Just fucking make it up. Figure it out. Not all of it should be set in stone. Rob, you back?
Hey, man. Hey. This is just warming up for Lawkeepers tomorrow, isn't it?
Yes. Yep. Perfect.
Where we'll have a string of failures in a row. It'll be great. Sorry, you're doing questions now, are we?
I had 2 questions on my Iskloft world building video yesterday, so I just answered those here.
Oh, that's a great idea. Excellent. Do continue.
I had literally just finished as you entered.
Perfect.
So such fortuitous timing.
Excellent. Okay, so you were saying something about Dishonored, but if you've already said that on the stream, then we can just move on. You don't have to repeat it for my sake.
Yeah, basically that Dishonored is like a major inspiration on Blades in the Dark as a game. It's like mentioned in the book as sort of an inspiration.
Okay.
So it would be a really good choice if you're trying to run a Dishonored game, I think.
I plan to at some point in the future, but I'm not going to start any more games just yet because
I know that feel
because of all the games. Excellent. So that was sort of us talking about cities. Shall we jump to the next topic?
Yeah.
Lloyd.
Rob.
Why aren't you more afraid of aberrations?
I'm so afraid of aberrations. I'm just so afraid.
Why are you so afraid? Why are you so afraid of them?
Imagine that there's a man-shaped thing that lives many miles beneath the earth, that has liquid purple skin, 5 tentacles on its face. It eats human brains, literally eats them for its sustenance. It has telepathic and psionic powers beyond your understanding. It is from a place so alien that there's no name for it beyond the far plane. What horror! Absolute horror. And to top it all off, that creature has a name so horrifying, the Mind Flayer. Just great.
Just great.
Be afraid of that.
You should absolutely be afraid of it, because the other really bad thing about it is that obviously it has all of those things, but why aren't you more afraid? Because it can literally make you do anything. It can control your mind. It can make you do stuff you don't want to do. It's yeah, they're pretty terrifying. And they should not be handled lightly at all. And it's difficult, and it is a... Would you say it's an incorrect choice to throw these at a low-level party?
I think it's fine, but then the party should really suffer for it.
Agreed.
Like, you know me with challenge ratings and stuff, but I feel like if you're going to put a creature like a Mind Flayer into your game, then it should be an encounter that is utterly terrifying and really scary, and probably a player should die. If you are a low-level party and you encounter a Mind Flayer, it should be harrowing.
It should. I think it's interesting. I put 2 Mind Flayers against you in Lawkeepers, but you had the backup of a giant spider.
Yes.
And 2 of you went down.
Yep.
And I felt that was kind of a good balance.
I felt like that was a good Mind Flayer encounter. Like, it was scary, and I thought I was going to die, which is the correct response, I think. You know? Like, these are not goblins. They're not orcs. They're weird, extraplanar, like, alien creatures, and they should not be trifled with.
No.
At all.
I think... they're also like, and I don't believe too much in like falling back on nostalgia too much, but they are very much a staple of D&D. Not just Mind Flayers, but the other famous aberration, the Beholder as well. They are staples of D&D, and they're staples because they earned their reputation. They are powerful, and they should be treated as such. If you want to throw a beatable Beholder at a party, then throw a spectator at the party, you know, like the lower level version of it or whatever. Like, it's not as impressive, it's not as cool, but if you want to get your kicks, your Beholder kicks, then, but on a low level party, then maybe use that, because if you're going to be using one of these amazing creatures, you don't want to be holding back on them. It's like my dragon principle. I never like to use like the young adult dragon or anything like that. Like, if I'm going to use a dragon, I will use a dragon, like a big fucker, because why would you hold back from that opportunity? Do you know what I mean?
Yep, I totally agree. I think that there's like there's some really iconic D&D monsters, like a red dragon, a Beholder, a Mind Flayer, like an Aboleth, I think is in that list, like a Balor, like these like amazing monsters. And I feel like if you're not using them as like a proper big like cinematic, like dramatic encounter, then you're just not doing the right service to the monster and like the icon that the monsters are, you know? Like, a fight with a Mind Flayer should be really memorable. It should be something that should really stick out, with a Beholder also, and with any of those creatures. Like, a dragon encounter should be once a campaign, maybe, you know? And when you do see it, should be so memorable, you know, which I think you've done well. But like, yeah, like, what's the point in a young dragon, you know? What's the point of it?
Yeah, it's the point of it is that dragons is on the front of the book, and it's there for people who are too impatient for their characters to level up to be able to deal with them. Now, this is why you then think to yourself, well, if you want a big dragon or a massively powerful monster in your game, but there aren't they're not going to be a match for it, then that's an interesting encounter. But that's fine because they're not hopefully going to fight it.
Yeah.
Because if they fight it, then that should spell the end.
Yep.
And I don't know, like I think this is quite an easy to understand concept. I don't know.
I don't know, because I feel like often what happens is that people look at the challenge rating and just are like, okay, that's what that monster is,
Yeah.
Mike has a really good series on like monster encounters and stuff, Mike the Piper, where he just talks about using monsters in ways that like maybe aren't obvious. Like to me, a mind flayer is at the center of the dungeon, controlling the whole thing. It's not like you walk into a room and there's 3 mind flayers, and because they're a C or 8, this party should be able to detect them. And that's not how you use a mind flayer, at all, I don't think.
No, agreed.
Like, I don't run D&D that way anyway, but I also think that like there are monsters that you can use in that way. Like mindless monsters or foot soldiers and things like that. But a mind flayer is so intelligent that I feel it needs to have a role beyond like, oh, we're fighting it now. It needs to have like a villain role to some extent,
And also, the plans of a mind flayer are often so incomprehensible to any normal. I say that like we're giving myself a lot of room for exploration, but like a mind flayer, its thoughts shouldn't be on the same level as as a normal creature, if you know what I mean by that.
Yeah.
So that adds to their horror. And it also gives you a really great weapon as a DM, because you're like, whatever they're doing, it's so vast and complicated and terrifying and disgusting that even I can't fully describe it to you.
Yeah.
However, it's bad. And then that knowledge, that ambiguity is the second weapon of the mind flayer. Not only does it have those tentacles and its powers, its third weapon is the ambiguity that you don't know how it's going to act. Therefore, you can't judge what its next move's going to be. You just don't know, which makes them really unpredictable in a fight.
Yep. There's like a thing called the blue and orange morality, so it's not black and white, because they're so alien that like they're not good or evil. It's so different that it's like they're blue and orange, like that's what they see as good and evil, because it's like incomprehensible to a person. It's like often used to describe like Lovecraftian horrors and like how they think. And the mind flayers are definitely Lovecraftian. There's major Lovecraft vibes going on with mind flayers, I think. But it's like you can't imagine what they're up to. You can't and if you tried to, you'd probably hurt yourself like trying to understand what their plans are and what their plots are. And they might do things that seem good even or helpful. They might act in ways you wouldn't expect majorly.
Their obvious inspiration is from the works of Lovecraft. There's no question. That's where they've come from. And also because of that, when dealing with mind flayers, you get to pull out the Lovecraftian tricks. Not only do you have the opportunity to use that terrifying ambiguity to their actions, but also there can be NPCs that have dedicated their entire life to working out their language and the bits and pieces that people do know about them. It's like an ongoing mystery. What are the mind flayers doing? Now, for those of you who are quite well read in the D&D lore and stuff, they would know that they come from outside of the material plane. They explore beyond this plane in vast ships, if I'm correct in speaking. They're
trying to get home or something.
Trying to get home or something, or find a new home, and that's where they start coming into different. I mean, it does change from time to time, but generally speaking, they're known to be come from outside the known plane of existence, which.
Yep. They have this like thousands of years of history where they like had enslaved the Gith and like had like a space empire and like all this weird shit, super, super weird that players probably have no idea about, that you can pull from. You can also do cool like sanity stuff with mind flayers, like madness conditions and like, like if you like look into the mind of a mind flayer, you might see something so horrifying that like it'll drive you insane. Or it might show you things, like when it connects with you telepathically. that would just drive you crazy. There's lots to be done there, I think.
And at the heart of their society, there is something else which is almost as, if not equally famous, and that is known as the Elder Brain. The vast core to their hive mind, the greatest intelligence, arguably, in all of D&D mythology. And I love the Elder Brain. I have never run a game with the Elder Brain. I've only ever been in a campaign where the Elder Brain was the main villain, and that was incredible. My friend had a really good way of playing it because he just came up with all of these different, really intricate strategies that we wouldn't have a hope of countering in sort of like an off-the-cuff situation. Like, he had really, really planned how he was going to use the Elder Brain in a really logical pattern, and it worked wonderfully. And I was spellbound by that particular campaign. And that's the way that you run an Elder Brain. You just have to be super prepared because they are super intelligent and know exactly what, they work out outcomes and different things. And have you ever gone up against an Elder Brain, Lloyd?
Yes, in the Gith game, we destroyed the Prime Brain, which is like the original Mind Flayer Elder Brain. The Gith game got to stupid high levels. It was like level 30, and we had spaceships and all sorts of crazy shit was going on. And we had an encounter where we were flying Spelljammer ships around the Prime Elder Brain, which was like this enormous, godlike sized brain. And we had like a Star Wars-esque like fighting. It was crazy. That's the only time I've come up against an Elder Brain. And that was kind of a strange example because we were Gith and we were like so ready for it, But I would love to. I was going to use an Elder Brain in the Gith game I was going to run, which unfortunately I cancelled. But
yes, I remember you saying.
I would like to see some Elder Brains in action and some Mind Flayers.
In a terrifying way.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, we could go into Beholders, but I think they deserve their own. Maybe next stream we'll do a Why Aren't You Are More Afraid of Beholders, and we'll talk about Beholders because they deserve a good chunk to discuss as well. We have one last topic, unless you covered it whilst I was away.
No, I don't even know how much we're going to go into this. I just thought it was a catchy title. So Kai has posted in the question thread or whatever, and somebody posted saying, "I never see the whip being used," and then one of the comments was basically that the whip doesn't do much damage, but technically they were designed to punch holes in shields and the arms holding them. That's what this person thought that whips were for.
Through shields.
That they were designed. I mean, like, just not even close.
No. Through a shield.
The whip, which is for whipping animals.
Whipping animals and slaves, yes.
That's what it's for. I imagine the whip has been around longer than the shield has,
I could buy someone using a whip to take a shield out of someone's hand, but even then it'd be hard because it's strapped to your arm, isn't it?
Yeah, yep.
Maybe a buckler, one that you just hold with your hand.
Sure.
You could take that, maybe. That's really funny and strange. I thought this was going to be a topic, Lloyd, but that, to be honest...
No. That's all. I just wanted to mention that.
That's just beautiful. It puts holes in people's arms, does it, as well? It goes straight through metal and...
Like, there's an argument to be made that the whip is like... what do you call it? Like, underrepresented in terms of its utility in D&D.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't do good damage, therefore it's kind of crap. But I don't know. I feel like that's just the case with D&D, but I think if you're creative with your use of these weapons, then you can do it anyway, Like, the whip is... You can take something out of somebody's hand if you're Indiana Jones, or the net can be used in a similar sort of way, throw it over somebody while you're fighting them and then stab them, or I don't know. Just because it's not mechanically very effective doesn't mean it can't be narratively very effective, I guess.
Yeah, using it to swing across chasms. Indiana Jones.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, there we go. Whips.
Yep.
I mean, I'm not compelled by the whip. Do you know what I mean? Like, unless I was just making a rip off of Indiana Jones, that's the only thing. Like Zorro uses a whip as well, doesn't he?
Yeah, I think so. I got nothing on Zorro. Like, I don't know. I mean, yeah, I think it's very gimmicky. You know, it is cool noise. I guess that's cool. But like, I don't know how enthused I am about it.
We were talking about Game of Thrones earlier, and that's I think the first time I was ever unconvinced by a fight in Game of Thrones is where one of the Sand Snakes uses a whip against people that are using spears and like axes and shit, and I'm like, that seems really risky to me. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't like. Sure, it can be accurate, but I also think there's like so much wind up. Like to try and use a whip, it has to be like a whoosh, right? For the damage that the whip is going to do to you, compared to going with an axe, like, do you know what I mean? Like, it's like a quarter of the effort, 100 times as fast, and like 500 times as damaging.
Like, I'm impressed if you can use a whip to like whack a cigarette out of someone's mask, like a mask mouth, like at a circus. But you're not trying to kill that person, are you? Just trying to do a trick. I don't know. Maybe we'll have to build a character that's just immense with the whip. Like Caius was saying, they get good if you have sneak attack with the whip. Then yeah, that could be all right. And you got reach.
I would hate to have to be a DM and describe how your whip kills a person, or like, like, I feel like, oh, come on, like. We have some questions on the post and also in the chat. We might just smash those. What do you reckon?
Let's do it, man. Although I did say your image will be fine, it isn't. You sound perfect. You sound perfect, but you're just still and smiling and handsome. So don't worry about it too much. Questions from Facebook first?
Yes, let's do that.
Okay, perfect. Do you have them up? Because when I crashed, mine closed. Yep. If you wouldn't mind going first.
Friend of the show, Nicholas Jacquet. I'm gonna start calling everyone friend of the show. I think
friend of the show, definitely. Yeah. And do you know what? The more you watch the Dice Cast, the more you'll level up. So you start with friend of the show, and then you'll become ally of the show, and then bastion of the show.
Yes,
it'll be great.
Finally, you'll get your own corner, like Caius.
Caius just automatically got his corner though. Like he's already earned his stripes.
Definitely. So Nicholas asks, there are many things in a city: taverns, shops, military, and such. How much do you prepare? Art is a great way to give an idea on how the city looks. What else do you use?
I mean, if it's a fantasy setting, like I was saying before, like generally speaking, I think I can accurately guess what players are going to do if they go into the city, because the trope works both ways. Fair enough, you as a DM will be using a tropey fantasy city, but at the same time, heroes or player characters want to go to a city to rest, to have safety. They want to buy things, and they want to talk to people. And I've been DMing a long time. I can generally accommodate for those things on the fly anyway. But I don't necessarily... I mean, I like to convey like a personality to the city, but I think that's kind of going to go into a question that we've got later. So in terms of preparation, I make sure I have like a bunch of names for really cool places for them to visit, with that personality sort of emblazed on top of it, so it has like a running theme. Like Freedom Salvation has the Stone's Blood Tavern, and it's named after that because one, the phrase drawing blood from a stone, but also there is a thing called Stone's Blood that is mined in Freedom Salvation, and there you go. It's just very, very simple, but it makes sense, and it feels like it makes sense when you're there. So I don't know what else to say.
Yeah, that's the simple approach, and I think like that's the best way to approach cities if you're not setting your campaign in the city. So I think if you're doing an urban campaign, then you need to do a lot more prep. You need to have a good idea of what the city looks like, and like we said earlier, try and use a real city. It's just it's easier than trying to like build your own city from the ground up, or even use a real city and then just like change names and stuff and like but the layout of an old medieval city like Rome or Dublin or Paris or any city in old Europe will have like an organic sort of sprawl that will make it look like a fantasy city, I think.
That's a really good idea. Actually, I've never thought of that. Use a real medieval city and just rename a few things. That's great.
You definitely do that.
And even with like Rome, for instance, isn't it the Seven Hills of Rome? Is it seven? Yeah.
Yep.
So even then, you've got like a characteristic thing about the city that you could just say off the cuff. Well, it's built upon seven hills or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's interesting, and it makes people think, oh, it's the city that's built on seven hills. Blah blah blah.
Yep. And most cities or a lot of cities in Europe would have something characterful about them like that, like a castle somewhere, or like it's built on a river or something like that. That would make it stand out. So yeah, hopefully that helps.
Hopefully.
Cities also have a lot of people in them. How do you show this to the players instead of telling them?
I mean, it's the interesting thing of the concept of show don't tell when you're running a role playing game, because invariably you're telling players everything.
Yeah, you're literally telling them.
So it's tricky. It's
show it being packed full of people, or if there are lots of people. I mean, the classic is like a kid burgles you.
Yeah, I've done that so many times.
Yeah. That's a classic. But also just like people bumping into you, like cues for things, like the hustle and bustle all over. The sounds of a city, like beyond just like people call. I've played Baldur's Gate 2 like 100 million times, and whenever you're walking through those cities, you can just hear somebody like calling out for like from their stalls, you know.
Yeah. Fresh food here. Get
exactly.
your prawns and cockles or whatever the fuck she kept saying. And smells. I always go for smells. Like, you can smell the fragrances of 1,000 different smells from the open market. You know, just tell them about what they're sensing and what they're seeing and stuff, and hearing. You can hear a blacksmith like chiming upon the anvil, and yeah, man.
Yep, and like music from all the taverns, and like the shuffling of a million footsteps, all that sort of stuff. There's a good way, instead of just being like, there's tons of people here, I guess you can do it with the other senses.
And you can portray the mood of the city. I don't want to go into that too much, because I know, again, there's a question about it. But if it's a nice city to be in, then you obviously explain the positive things that they smell and hear and see. If it's a bad city, tell them how they step in horse shit and how someone shoves them out of the way and is really rude to them, and how someone throws excrement out of a window, you know, like Tudor style, and it lands on one of them, maybe. Who knows?
Sure. And you see thugs in the street who like no one does anything about it, and whatever else, all that sort of good stuff. Junkies, beggars. Okay. Tedder says, do you have a preferred method for bringing a party together, either for campaigns or one-shots? How often do you encourage players to create bonds and ties with each other ahead of time versus forming everything in-game? Does it vary by the type of game?
I prefer to form everything in game. How? Action, action, action. That is my favorite thing to do, because it's just a cheat code. People are brought together in stressful situations. You are forced to work together. You are forced to help to hold someone else's back. You may not trust in the character's personality that you're meeting for the first time, but you will instantly trust in their abilities and see that they are useful to your cause. There's just so many reasons why starting off with action to introduce people is a great way. I don't do it all the time, but I do it a lot because it works and it's fun. And it's a fun way of, rather than you just saying you all meet. But if you're like doing a one shot sometimes, and you only have like the one combat that you want to have happen because you're only running one game, then definitely start off people knowing each other or whatever. Definitely wait to use the action for the bit that you definitely need the action to happen in for the one shot, I guess.
Yeah, I think it can depend on, for me, it depends campaign to campaign. Like, it's good to have like I don't know what it's called in the monomyth, but like the like the rallying cry or whatever. Like you all meet up and you've been told to do a thing. You know, you all have been brought together for or by somebody for some purpose. Is always a good way to do it. But I also think there's like merit to figuring out bonds. I think particularly for one shots, it's really powerful to give players like a questionnaire or like give them a hook or a tie-in so that they're all connected. And I just think for a one shot, it adds a lot to the game overall.
I agree.
For campaigns, I really like the Session Zero stuff, and I think you can build up a lot of stuff before the game even starts, and then you have like these relationships before the game starts, and I think that can be useful as well. But I don't know if there's a right or wrong answer. Like it's just whatever it takes your fancy.
Yeah, there isn't a right or wrong answer. The reason I often have people not know each other is because one, it gives your players cool interactions. I always think that characters meeting for the first time is just cool. I like the idea of it. And also for people that are saying, well, our characters already know each other, I think it just feels a little bit forced at the beginning when they're like, oh yeah, it's like the time we fell into that pit of gundarks. Do you know what I mean? Like it feels a bit like that. And you also can't plan for how your characters are going to interact because you don't. As much as people say they prepare how they're going to play their characters, I say that's bullshit. I say that comes out straight out the window. I don't know what my character's going to be like until I start playing the game. So the person playing next to me is not going to know that character either. So it just seems more organic and it seems more natural in the role playing if you're finding that out together, if you know what I mean.
Yep, I agree. I mean, I have the same sort of thing where like I will think a character will be one way and then I start playing and that's when I actually discover what's going on with the character. Like it's almost impossible to know before you start.
Yeah,
anyway.
I agree. Vasco, I didn't know was going to be an arsehole. I didn't know I didn't know Vagnar was going to be an arsehole. Like it's great and good fun to discover it like that. But like you say, no wrong answer. It is useful that it is quicker to obviously have characters know each other. So you win some, you lose some.
Certainly.
Let's see. I should read a question, and I keep forgetting to bring up the questions because I'll read the next one, Lloyd. You
okay.
go.
We're on. Okay, I'll read this one then. One of Caius's corner. One of my problems when describing a city was trying to describe too much. I have developed a 4-phrase technique to describe each neighborhood: architecture, activity, opportunities, and threats. Structure. Do you have any city description techniques to try help give the right amount of info to give the flavor without swamping?
I think I covered it very briefly for me when we were talking about it just then about the mood of the city goes hand in hand with the description of the city. So you're saying what they see and what they smell and what they experience or whatever. At the same time as you're describing it, you're also telling them what the city is like. It's undeniable that when you're in a particular city, it feels like that city, and there is no other city that could replicate it. I'm sure if you walk through the streets of Dublin, it's unlike walking through the streets of anywhere else. Same with London, same with Tokyo, same with, Sydney, anywhere, So I think maybe use that to your advantage. I don't have a set way. I guess I kind of just get a good idea of what it would be like to be there and just go for it.
Yep. That's exactly it. That's what I would say as well. The mood is like the key to a city, I think. And if you can nail that or like know what the mood is, then all of the interactions and all of the descriptions all kind of feed into that.
I think, Caius, though, that's a really, really good thing, and I might actually steal those 4 points because whereas my way would be it would get across the feeling, but that, I suppose, presents the players immediately with what it looks like, what's happening, and then what they can do in that situation with the opportunities and the threats. I mean, maybe giving it all in one go would swamp it, but I suppose it just depends how you're dealing with it. But I know Caius is very good with sending a message, so I'm sure he doesn't have too much trouble with it. You know what I mean?
There is a possibility that, like, because I find that particularly with like old school modules and stuff, like you get to a place and then there's like a big thick paragraph of what you can see, and as a player that to me is like not useful because I can only take in so much information at a time. And if it's like the room is 32 cubits by 14 cubits and you know what I mean? And like there's a table over here and it's 3 feet wide and 4 feet deep, and like I just don't need that kind of information. What I do need is like, what does it feel like? And what can I see? What do I first notice when I look? You know, that's like the important stuff, I think.
Something I noticed Nico do. Wait, were we in the Rome game? We didn't talk about the Rome game.
We didn't talk about the Rome game, no.
We'll save the Rome game to the end. But Nico does this amazing thing. We were, I jumped into this Roman game that's been going for a little while that Lloyd's been playing in, that Nico runs, and there was a scene where you were walking through the camp, having just finished talking to Julius Caesar himself, and it was an encampment where food was being made, and there were the hustle and bustle of lots of different people from different cultures all in this one place, basically under the rule of Rome. But, you know, and he kept adding more detail into what we could see as we went on. Like I remember very distinctly him telling us about the broth, and then he later said that there was a dog sat on a raised bit of wood or something. Do you remember that? You remember that? He says, I don't know why that sticks out for me, but just like little details, and he kept dropping it in. So I guess kind of just spread out, like how and what you're describing. Like you're obviously going to be moving through the city, so you're going to be able to take your time in giving all that information across rather than in one go, I guess. Is what
piece it out, I suppose, rather than like, okay, you arrive at the square, you know, for this neighborhood. Here are 300 things that you can see. You can be like, you arrive and you see this, and then they move somewhere else. Like, oh, and you notice this as you move, and you can smell this as you move, and then you get to the next place. And yeah, kind of like feed it in consistently as opposed to front loading it, maybe.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, hope that's helpful. Brian Walesby says, hi, in relation to my 30-day world, which is a Kickstarter thing that you've probably seen already, but Dead Man's Guide to Dragon, go and look for it on Kickstarter. In relation to my 30-day world, have you found any of the questions, including those still to come, difficult to answer? Have they made you look at areas of your setting that you haven't really looked at before?
Not yet.
Neither have I. I'll tell you what. Like I've been happy to talk about them though, because I've realised that, oh look, I've actually got like quite a, you know, I know a lot of the answers to the questions, so that makes me feel okay. Because if those are common questions that are going to be asked of me, I feel confident that I can tackle them. The one that's coming up tomorrow, I'm not really looking forward to, but it's only because it's one of the things that's spoken about the most, which is how common is magic in your setting and how is it used and where does it come from? I don't know whether it's just because it's the community that we operate in, but that question, I would argue, is probably the one that is asked the most of everyone's settings.
Yes.
And I've answered it a number of times. The Magisterium, the Witch Hunters, it's locked down. Only certain people are allowed to use it, blah, 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 you know? And it's so... That's only because of repetition. It isn't the my 30-day world's fault that that's the case. It's just my experience.
I struggle a little bit with like heroes and villains in Isclaf because it's a gray setting. It's not black and white. Evil doesn't really exist as a concept there. Neither does good. It's more about selfish and selfless, I guess. You know, and even that is not that common there. So morality is kind of a tricky one in Isclaf. So I kind of struggled with like who the biggest hero is and who the biggest villain is. But like I was able to answer it. Didn't take me long to think about it, you know. So I think there may be questions down the road somewhere that will be hard to answer. But
and one thing that I have liked about it, I have been forced to like sort of challenge myself a bit because I know the answers to a lot of those questions. So with my hero one, because I was like, wow, actually, like I have quite a lot of villainous figures in my world, but not so many heroic figures that are of note. So I thought, well, let's think. There must be one. And I remembered I'd written like a tiny bit, like about a year ago, about the king of Farwide from way back when Farwide was maintaining its independence from the rest of the kingdoms. And I said that there was this battle on the Cloud March where those forces on Farwide could hold back any army because they have to get across that massive bridge that you basically is a bottleneck, isn't it? Like you can't get past the army. So I spoke about Ivalo Artoon, and I enjoy talking about it because as much as you have heroes in your setting, I like talking about what happens after their great victory that makes them a hero. Sure, he won the battle on the Cloud March and he was able to enforce that Advent would remain independent of the rest of the kingdoms. But he also started getting like terrible dreams in his older years and started hearing voices and was being beckoned across the land. And then one day he took a horse and vanished and disappeared into the night and was never heard of ever again. So it's cool to have heroes, but it's also cool to say that, all right, they had like a heroic life, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it was always that way.
Yeah. Yep.
Do you know what I mean?
Yep. I mean, that's what, with mine as well for Iscloft, it was Gunnar, legendary King Gunnar Gunnarsson,
yes.
who like is arguably also the greatest villain in Iscloft, like to some extent. So I'm going to talk about like the history and how people know that, but also how that's not really the story at all. But that's what people think the story is, and that's why he's a hero, which was fun. Yeah, overall, I think it's making me think about my setting and answer questions that I usually wouldn't answer about Iscloft, because the settings, the questions are open and they're kind of made for. Generic sounds mean, but it's kind of for like every setting. Most settings are very specific. And mine's super specific, so it's like making me answer questions that I wouldn't really think about for Iscloft, which is a bit fun.
That's it's really good. And I have been really enjoying watching other people's or reading other people's installments of my 30-day world as well. It's just a really great exercise. So yeah, cool. John Harrow says, "Oh, damn, this is going to be tricky off the cuff. What is your favorite fictional portrayal of a city and why?"
Ooh.
Oh, that's hard.
That's really hard.
There's so many.
Let's see.
You go first.
God, it's hard. I could think of like 3. I don't think I could. I love
3 as well.
Menza Baranzan in the
damn, that's a good one.
In the what's it called? Homeland? Is that what it's called? The ones where Drizzt is in Menza Baranzan.
Yes,
and also in the War of the Spider Queen books. Menza Baranzan is amazing and really well thought out and like really feels like a real place there. That's a great city. Oh God.
I'll do because 3. I think King's Landing is one of my favorites. As I was mentioning earlier, it's just very, very rich. Like, it is also very well thought out. And as I was talking about names the other day on a live stream, and I kept coming back to King's Landing and all of the places in King's Landing, like the Red Keep. You've got Blackwater, the Blackwater. I say about names, I can't remember the full name of it now. What's the gate called? The Bloody Gate. Is it the Bloody Gate?
The Blood Gate is in the mountains up in what's he called it?
That's the area, isn't it?
But there's a Street of Steel in King's Landing, and there's Magor's, whatever you call it, and it's fucking great.
The Sept of Baelor, there's lots of very memorable places in King's Landing. So that would be my easy answer anyway.
I really, oh God, this is so hard. In the show Rome by HBO, Rome is amazing. You should, now that you're in the Roman campaign, you should watch that show.
I've been meaning to.
It's, I think, the best thing HBO's ever done. I adore it. And Rome just really feels real. And they've done an amazing job making it feel real. So that would be number 2.
Not a fictional city, though, is it, Lloyd?
Well, it's a fictional portrayal of that city.
That's true. You got me there. I'm going to say, let's just do one more because we don't want to be here all day. My cheat answer, but I guess it kind of counts, is the Citadel in Mass Effect.
Oh, that's a good one.
Because it is a union of all of these different races that have to integrate and work together. It's something I've been thinking about quite a lot for my new setting, The Last Dimension. Yes. Lots of different races being forced to work together. Obviously, they're not forced to work together in Mass Effect, but it's a combination of communication between different peoples. And I think it's a really, really great representation of what that would be like in a science fiction world. So yeah, The Citadel.
Oh yeah, God, the city in Altered Carbon is amazing, and in Blade Runner.
Yet to watch that. Blade Runner's great. Yeah.
Seattle in 2075 for Shadowrun is amazing.
Yeah.
God, yeah, I could do this all day.
Jesus. Gondor. I'd say Gondor's up there.
Yeah, Minas Tirith.
Sorry, Minas Tirith. Yeah. Not Gondor. That's not a sea. Yeah.
Good question, John.
Very good question. Nice job. Kai says not a question. Are we reading this? Oh no, this is about the whip. Yeah, that's about the whip. Yeah.
The rest of this thread is all about the whip.
Oh, so it is. Okay. Do we have any questions in the chat?
We do. Grayson asks, when is the next Chinokawa session? But I also see that Nico has answered that. Is a month from now, basically. Chinokawa is the samurai game that Nico started running.
We should talk about that because we didn't talk about that. Let's talk about that and we'll talk about the Rome game.
Certainly will. I think that's all the questions, though, which is nice.
It is.
Yeah. So we played in Chinokawa, which is a Mythic Japan game that Nico ran here on URLDM, and oh boy, it was good. I played Takakage, and Taylor played I cannot say her name, Kikuyo. Gotham. God, that's a good one. I just saw it in the chat there. Gotham.
I was just typing. I was like, how can I portray Gotham? I adore Gotham.
Yes, Gotham's great. We played this great game where we were like the scions of House Hamato, and we had like been brought up in this monastery in the middle of nowhere and like learned our crafts. We had a samurai, a monk, and a sort of ninja. So we had learned all these skills, and we kind of like came of age. A woman had come. Lionel's character, the monk, saw this woman crying out in down by the river.
Which, can I just add, Nico does a really, really good crying Asian woman.
He does.
I was like, the man has no end to his talent.
Yep. Simply unstoppable. So yeah, we that woman was crying, and we had said that there were bandits in the nearby town, which was called Taraji, I think. Anyway, in the nearby town, there had been banditry and stuff like that. And so she vanished, and then it was mentioned at dinner that this thing was happening, and we decided we were going to go and sort it out. Also that night, the guy who had been looking after us for our whole life, he told us the story of how Tajiri, the story of how we had been rescued, basically, and that we were the scions of House Hamato, or Clan Hamato. And there was like some heartbreaking moments because like this man had like looked after us his whole life, but then when it was clear that we were like nobility and he wasn't, then there was the immediate sort of like social caste thing that came down, and like really there should have been like a hug and like a gratitude, but instead like there was just like Japanese stoicism, like you need to bow now. It was pretty heartbreaking. We went into that town and walked into this bar. It's actually like it was a tea house that had been turned into a brothel by these bandits. We walked in there and we just did some absolutely rad Japanese mythological radness, where like people were running across tables and there was katanas flashing, and there was like this fool, this like kabuki fool who was like dancing around the center, and he was like spitting nonsense and like dancing and whatnot. The fight was really, really violent, and there was like sprays of blood and psh, like Tarantino-esque sort of blood sprays. And yeah, so we defeated those people. We were near death at that stage. Like we had been roughly handled in that fight. And then we saw that there was a fire up on the monastery where we had come from. And we didn't know if we were going to go back or not because it was obviously dangerous. Like my character was okay, Takakage, but the other two were in bad shape. But nonetheless, Takakage wouldn't be dissuaded, and we went there to see what had happened. And the bandits, had captured our mentor, our foster father, and they were torturing him. And we had to sit there and watch. There was lots of them. There were not many of us, and we were trying to figure out what to do. We were badly wounded, and so Takakage really wanted to charge in there, and then had told his brother and sister, "We should go. We should run. You run. I'll follow in a second." And then he like fired an arrow and killed his foster father to put him out of his misery. But then instead of running, charged headlong into the battle, and yeah, there was a brutal fight, and then there was like this awful moment for the other two players who were like, should we go back? Should we not? It was like session 1 of a campaign, and death was very much on the cards. And in the end, they did come and save Takakage, and oh god, it was so good. I haven't had a session like that in a long time. It was tremendous.
It was equally breathtaking to watch. I really enjoyed it. Now, 2 things about this, because one, it just needs to be said, we need to get Nico on here at some point so we can talk playing historical games.
Yes.
2, what were the challenges? What did you find challenging, if at all, about playing a game in ancient Japan? Were you intimidated by that at all, or?
It's not something I know as well. Like, I don't know the settings super well. Like,
That's
I know,
what I'm asking. Yeah,
I would have played Shogun a lot.
Yes,
and like I would have watched quite a few samurai films and stuff in my time, but like I wouldn't know it anywhere near as well as like Rome or sort of Viking Age stuff. I knew enough to like basically play a grunting samurai, which is what I did, which is
yes,
basically did that. And I knew enough that there was like a very sort of staid and stoic sort of social structure where it's not really encouraged to show lots of emotion, and it's particularly for a samurai, it's like about mastering yourself. But then Takakage was not good at that, which is something I like about him. He's like got the technique, but he doesn't have the sort of willpower to like very into his honor and into his standing kind of thing. It was really interesting. It's not a setting that I often play in, so it was really nice to play in it.
It was just really interesting because I've never seen anyone run anything like that, really. And yeah, it was really, really good to watch as well. And I'm looking forward to the next one. And speaking of historical games, let's finish this off by talking about Rome, the Roman game that we were in, man. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that one? Because breathtaking siege in that game.
Yep, we. I mean, it's many sessions in now.
That's why I'm making you explain it rather than me, because I was new. Yeah. We had just finished a sort of long quest chain where we had been hunting down gold that was stolen that belonged to Caesar. Well, ostensibly belonged to Caesar. We had like gone into Spain, or I guess it's called Iberia, and like negotiated with various tribes, and we had fought in a little skirmish, and we had done all this stuff with like ships and stuff, and basically we tracked down almost all of this missing gold, and we brought it back to Caesar, and Caesar was very pleased with that. So it opened with us getting a pat on the back from Caesar. More than a pat on the back, we were given horses from Caesar, which was like a huge like a social thing, like a cultural gift. For Caesar to give you a horse is like a really important sort of impact on your standing. We're also given land in a province of our choosing, which means we could have land in Italy, which is not usually something that soldiers get. And double pay and all this sort of cool stuff. We got to meet Caesar, which is terrifying and great. And then we got a little bit of time off. We were assigned to a new commander. We met this guy we thought was dead, Sylvanus, who we had met 10 sessions previously, maybe. I don't know how long ago, when we were fighting in Belgium. He was a cavalry commander. We did not get on. He was very, very up himself, nobility sort of. But seems to have been humbled. He like obviously lost a lot of people in his journey. He was a slave for a while to the Belgians, and now he's a tribune, which is like a general. And we had a nice little meeting with him, and then we met your character, Drusus. We initiated that meeting by getting very, very drunk and
talking about previous battles and getting to know each other that way. And then we're sieging Massilia. Massilia was a I guess now it's Marseille, was a Greek city in the Mediterranean, kind of in the south of France. Massilia had sided with Pompey, and we are sided with Caesar, and so we had to do something about that. So we all kind of got ready for the siege to come. It was absolutely mental. There were so many things going on. We were trying to basically move up the siege engines and the rams and making sure that the siege engines kept firing and all that sort of stuff.
There was one thing that, like, the first thing that really stood out for me when that siege started was that I really felt like I was a small cog in the war machine that is the Roman Empire. Like, us approaching the walls in testudo formation with the shields above us, hand on the shoulder of the man in front of you, or whatever, like that, it felt like I was there. Like, people were getting spiked by like ballista ammo coming down off the walls and stuff. And oh man, sorry, do carry on.
Yeah, I mean that's something I felt too. Like, there was all this other stuff happening. Like, all these siege engines were firing over our heads, and then like from the walls to our siege engines, and from our siege engines to the walls, and there was like rams and stuff, and they were getting destroyed, and we had to like basically like break apart a testudo so we could send some people off to a scorpion which had been badly damaged, and then like try and push the ram ourselves until we finally got to the walls, got up the ladders, and then it was just insane chaos. Like, we got up to the top of the ladder, and there were all these like, the thing that Nico does really well, which I've stolen, and I know Jeff has stolen, is when you do an initiative list, is you put the name of the bad guy into the initiative list. So rather than it being, player character, bad guy 1, player character, bad guy 2, it's all of the names, and then all of the names of the bad guys. And all the names of the bad guys in this game are like historically accurate. So it wasn't like Massilian Hoplite, it was like Hoplite, Massiliae, Epilocoi, or whatever it was. And it's like, it all just felt so real and so visceral.
Yeah, every troop type as well. Like, obviously Nico's a buff, and he knows an awful lot about a number of historical periods, but like that came across really strong for me when we played that the Fall of Troy game. And again with this, like, that's a really, really smart technique to do, and it works equally well in fantasy games as well. Like, giving them names and stuff, like it makes it feel a bit more, I don't know, it's just a really neat trick. I had boiling sand poured on my character, which was not great at all. I was feeling a bit big for my boots because I done my first couple of rolls or whatever, and I'm like, oh my god, like, my character like is optimal. Like, I thought, this is a Nico game, obviously threat is going to be high, I want to make sure that I'm going to be like, good at what I do at one thing, and that one thing is killing. Okay. I'd never played a champion before. I played a fighter before, but I think I was a battle master. I can't remember. Never played a champion. I was just like, oh my god, I should be this more often. It's just that I want to win class, in my opinion. Like, I just so much going for me. It was great.
We got to the top of the walls, and we had to fight these hoplites, and we like split into two teams, because there was, on one side there was the gastrophetes, who are like these men who have like these enormous belly bows that they're like firing over the walls, and then on the other side there was a scorpion that was firing, and so some of us went there, some of us went to the other side, and then there was like the door at the end that we were trying to get through, and that's where you were. That's where you got the boiling sand poured down on you. Inside there was all these Greeks, like hoplites with long spears and shields, and we at the top of the walls had taken that scorpion who was firing, and now we were firing it at the tower, like across the wall. It was mental, and very, very dangerous. I took a critical hit and basically would gain 3 levels of exhaustion at the end of the fight. I think Dan's character took a critical. No, it was later. So we got to the top of the wall, and we managed to claim it, and we raised the Roman flag, and that was great. We took like 3 minutes of rest, and then into the city proper. You tell them about this caravan charge, because it was just the best.
So we had a choice. We had finally taken the tower on the section of the wall that we were in charge of taking, and we felt really good. We beat some hardcore people. Like I can't remember exactly what they were, but there was a dude that was like plaguing us with like negative effects because like he was like singing or something like that. Like so he seemed like a boss, and we were like, oh Christ, this guy's insane. And we finally managed to cut him down, break through the bottleneck, and get the our forces inside. Hooray, Rome, for Rome or whatever. We're sitting pretty. Now let's go to the center of the city and take this place. We file, like you rightly say, out of the guard tower after 3 minutes rest, and we just hear the sound of thunder as heavy Greek cavalry is just gunning at us down a straight road where we have no way of going into an alleyway or anything. We're just like in the way of this cavalry charge, and we have to form up with our Roman shields and just take it. And it was absolutely nuts. We've spoken a little bit, and I know we were talking to Jeff about this as well, about like the feeling of what it would be like to take a cavalry charge with heavily armored men, heavily armored horses directly to the face. And it felt like that. The battle that ensued was desperate and horrific. We were all badly injured from trying to take the wall. Dan got critically hit in the same place that he got critically hit before. He had basically had his hip caved in from a previous battle, and he basically had the same hip destroyed once again. Yep. So if he ever rolls a 1, he's instantly going to fall over and basically lose his turn, essentially, wasn't it? Like,
yeah.
Oh man, it's such a brutal table. But if you're gonna get hit with a spear from a dude charging on a horse, then you're lucky to get away with that, in my opinion.
Absolutely, yeah.
Like you should say thank you when you get that one. The fight was brutal. It was horrendous. We took advantage of the fact that it's easier to kill a horse than it is to kill a man sometimes, or at least attack a horse to bring them down. But yeah, it was nasty, and we weren't left in a particularly good position. And the siege, what was funny was that the siege of this place historically took, was it
7 months or something, I think?
Months, yeah. And obviously that has been happening, I'm guessing, before we arrived. So we're sort of like at the climax of the siege, perhaps. But what struck me was just how very real it was, how tense it was. Like it didn't let up the whole game from that point. And it left me wanting more. It left me really, really wishing we could have gone to the heart of the city and put an end to them. But that's just a good way of getting people to want to come back next session, because now
we will get there.
Looking for more Greek blood to be on my blade. I can't wait.
That game has a really special sort of violence, I think. Like it really makes battles feel real, and that's like I think quite hard to do. But like it's never just like you're in a battle and it's always like stuff happening all around you, and you can like really get the sense of like the whole battle scale, which can be very hard to do.
There was one dude that like I remember so many moments of it because the battle was so immersive. Like I was looking behind me as one of the men behind me on the ladder basically got an arrow through the eye, and he fell and he went through one of the pikes on the bottom of the ramparts to stop people running up to them. Oh man, people getting impaled, people getting cut to pieces. Yeah, just great.
Yep, and the thunder of the cavalry charge, I could really feel it. Like we all lined up and we were waiting to receive the charge, and then we threw our pila, and some of the horses in the front line went down, and then other horses like crashed over them, but then they kind of reformed at the last second and smashed into us. Oh, it was so good. Yeah, it really felt very scary.
And I don't know, like it because in a way I like the idea that obviously the Romans are the invading force, like I know, because they're rebelling, aren't they? They were rebelling actually, weren't they? So
currently it's a civil war situation, so like it's still a loyal Roman city, but it's to the wrong Roman in our view. I mean, it's not like we're playing the bad guys, but we're there to do a job, and the characters that we play are there to do that job well. And that's another cool thing about it. Like, it's nice to feel needed. Yes. I mean, often in the Rome game, we have been the bad guys because Rome historically is the bad guy. They say that Rome conquered the world in self-defense, but I don't know how accurate that is. Just like such xenophobia, such like casual racism from Romans. And it's like one of the reasons we don't broadcast the Roman game so much is because it's like very historically accurate and like, Romans don't give a shit about political correctness to some extent, And like, I don't know if it's racist to say like something about the Bell guy from 2,000 years ago, but even so, it's a certain tone to the game that like maybe doesn't fit well with everyone's tastes.
And I understand completely. There's a lot of it's just it's true to how it was in every way, and I think it's a much better game for that. Yeah. Obviously, the people that play that game are some of the loveliest people you could ever meet. Yeah. Like, it's obviously not that, but the content itself is graphic and nasty because it was back then. But fantastic game. Anything else to add, Lloyd?
I think that's it.
Yeah, I think so. Apologies before to everyone watching about my technical difficulties. Hopefully that'll be that out of the way for a little while, because every now and then it happens to me. It's not all the time, but every now and then, and I don't know why.
Let's hope. We have Lore Keepers coming up tomorrow.
We do, yes. Lore Keepers tomorrow at 6 EDT, 10 p.m. GMT, chapter 15. It's ramping up. It's we're gonna go into the final kind of act of the campaign, which I'm very excited about. About 5 sessions, I estimate.
Very exciting.
So we're getting there. It's gonna be good. You got anything else coming up, Lloyd?
We have Against the Shadow on Monday.
Yep.
Which will be continuing the siege of Gundabad.
Yes.
See how that goes. And that is it, I think, for the next while. I have a Harbinger game on the 4th of April that I'm running. But other than that, I think mostly it's going to be a little bit quiet.
Yes, it's going to quiet down, which is fine because the other week, or the weeks past, we were playing in games kind of constantly.
Yes.
Although it was nice in the Rome game, Lloyd, because it meant that you and I were actually playing in a game together.
Yes. Which might be the first time that's happened almost.
Second time, I think, maybe. I don't know. Well, but it's not often. So that was
happen a lot. Yeah.
Not a lot. But yeah, so thank you ever so much for those of you who watched. Why am I signing out when it's on your channel?
That's a good question.
You continue.
Thanks for watching. If you did, and if you're watching in the future, all the stuff. That's my sign off. It's not very professional. That's all I got.
Bye. That's it.
We gotta do the bye.